And the power of that energy, of the Supreme Being, is the source of our salvation. It is that Shaktipat that comes to us in a moment of surrender, that lifts us out of the hell realm of the egoic suffering. That is the only way out of the trap. There is no way out on the level of mind. You cannot think your way out. You cannot figure your way out. You can't take drugs and find a way out. You can't get out through any egoic means of changing your external life. You can only get out by going within to the depth. And then your life will change because you will have the courage to act from the real self. Very radical changes may happen, but they won't be changes that are happening in order to try to control and repress the unconscious and get away from one's anxieties and one's shadow. All of that will have been dissolved and can only be dissolved by the power of God. There is no pill that any psychiatrist can prescribe that will cure you of anxiety. It can cover it over for a few hours. You can have a Band-Aid, but it won't get to the root of the issue. And life will never be satisfying and fulfilling until you get to the very core of your being. And free yourself by that realization of the eternal self, of the fear of death, and the agony of the egoic suffering that is based on its own feeling of lack. That lack can never be healed except through union with God. It is God that we lack. And that when we have surrendered to that one who can fulfill the lack, then the one who is lacking dissolves, because that one never existed in the first place. And then we are in the Advaita realization. And so there is really nothing to do in the practice. We sit here, but what do we do while we sit here? You cannot think the words, who am I, who am I? That won't get you there. It helped Sri Krishna Prem, yes, because he was forced to go beyond words through Ramana's relentless pushing him deeper inward. But the question of who am I must be answered only with the intuitive feeling of the self. It cannot be through a description. It cannot be a talking to another. It has to be an immersion into the very source and the core of the heart. An immersion into the silence that is deeper than words. And a willingness to stay in that silence until the ego has been completely dissolved. The good news is that that can all happen in 12 and a half minutes. Yogis timed it. They're very accurate about these things. You can get to the first stage of Samadhi with 12 and a half minutes of silence. I would love to time people here, but I don't know if they can be silent for 12 and a half minutes. When we get to that point, we'll start doing our own research on that. But that's what is said, that it takes only that amount of time to erase the tapes. And then once they're erased, the chatter doesn't start again. It's done. No more messages left on your answering machine by the other. It's erased once and for all, and then there is no other. So are you willing to sit uninterruptedly, without interrupting yourself with your ego, for a short few minutes to achieve liberation? If there is true love for God, it's very easy. But if our capacity for love, if our faith is lacking, remember that last one, Shraddha, the last of the 6 treasures we talked about yesterday. Or was it this morning? It was this morning. That faith in the presence of God as the self is the key to being able to open your heart. But it has to be a faith also in yourself that you are worthy of receiving the ultimate blessing. You must know that you are a child of God. You were brought here for the one purpose of the glorification of God through falling into illusion, ignorance, sin, call it whatever you will, into Maya, in order to return. The journey has to go into the darkness in order to appreciate the light. The world has to have a Kali Yuga. It has to have a time of darkness and fall and pain and suffering and cynicism and complete eclipse of God consciousness. Just like that. It all has to fall in order to be picked up again and returned to the source. And so if we are willing to accept that we have been on a long, strange journey into the darkness, to gather experience, to gather knowledge that we could not have had if we stayed in the light. We had to make this journey, and many blessings will come from this journey, but you can't convert the experiences into the blessings until you have returned. And as you come back through from the lower chakras that we have fallen to, back upward, then all of that which has been addiction and greed and lust and pain and suffering and anxiety and all of that is transformed. It becomes again the great blessings of wisdom that will enable you to be a healer for others. That's the archetype of the wounded healer. And everyone at this moment in time has been wounded. If you haven't been wounded, in fact, you won't be as powerful a healer because you won't understand the pain of other people. And the only way you can have compassion for the pain of others is if you have gone through some of that pain yourself and have converted it into wisdom. And so in a way, those who have fallen the furthest become the greatest teachers. Some of those who were the most, had lives as criminals and as dissolute beings living and enjoying the jouissance of the lower chakras have become the greatest saints and sages. In every tradition, the Christian, the great Tibetan saint who was a murderer, what was his name? His name escapes me for the moment, but was a very powerful teacher, one of the highest of any tradition. Same with St. Augustine, same with many saints. And so the falling is only a fall into experiences that will turn into wisdom. It is not something to feel bad about or feel shame about. But don't stay in the fallen state. Bring the wisdom back to the source. That's what this time is now about. Convert the pain into power, the power of love.